Stephanie,
Hi.
how
Again.
are you? Good.
I'm good.
Is it morning still for you? Good morning.
No, we just turned afternoon.
You just turned literally it's noon. It's not even afternoon yet. It is noon.
10 seconds ago. Yeah.
It's good to see you. Thanks for coming on again and pitching in and helping us cover for Chris. This is really way too hard to do by myself, so I appreciate you coming on. And then in a week, Chris and I are going to swap spots, and you're sticking around. You're going to be the regular now for hosting on the shows, and Chris will be back. Today we have a really exciting. I'm really excited about this. We hear a lot about working in versus working on the business, and we're going to really kind of dive deep on that. The opening question: why does transitioning from owner to CEO matter? According to Harvard Business Review, 70% of founders are replaced as CEO before their company goes public. That's pretty amazing. Often because they fail to evolve their leadership style as the businesses grow. If your business depends on you and then you don't own the business, you have a job. And it's the worst job in the world because you're working for a lunatic from Micah Gerber. We're gonna introduce Betsy. Betsy's our guest. She's a serial entrepreneur whose real estate empire includes an Inc. 5000 brokerage, a title company, a real estate school, and a property management firm. With endorsements from Barbara Corcoran and a Wharton MBA, she's mastered the art of building businesses that don't depend on her daily involvement. Betsy, welcome to the How to Founder podcast.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm gonna throw you
a couple of credentials there. Hey,
a couple of credentials. I'm gonna throw you a softball. Why does this transition from owner to CEO matter?
Well, like you said, sometimes the skills of what got you to where you are doesn't get you to where you're going, and so you really do either have to transition to that or bring the talent in if you want to continue to grow your business. I think for me also, it was. For my sanity. I no longer wanted to stay in the business, and I wanted to be able to be the true visionary and not be bogged down with the day-to-day operations of the business. It's a totally different skill set. It's a different personality type. It's rare that you're good at both anyway. And so when you get yourself out of a seat that you're not naturally talented in, and you bring in somebody that is their skill set and their unique ability, then you can truly flourish, I believe. So those are the reasons why I chose to move in that direction.
I hear this a lot. Don't work in your business, work on it. Transitioning from owner to what does that really mean? What does it mean to work on the business and not in the business? Help give us some grounding, give us some examples.
Well, so for me, I always ask myself, and I have a weekly check-in with myself, are my businesses self-managing and are they self-growing? So self-managing means I can go away for 2 weeks to 4 weeks and maybe get a phone call or two and everything runs smoothly. That to me is my definition of my kind of criteria, my bar for self-managing. Self-growing is I can do that same thing and then the business is actually growing while I'm away. So that's the barometer that I use. So I'm only called in. I kind of almost think of it like a sports analogy where it's like the head coach. Like they're not involved in the defense and the offensive plays, but they're involved in the bigger things. Or think of a CEO of a ginormous company. They're not involved in somebody's commission or the paycheck, or a customer calls in upset. What do I do? Or even a system or processy that's no longer working or could be better utilized. They're not involved in that level of detail. They've got people in place that they trust and who are skilled at those things. And they're looking at the bigger picture and the future and the vision of where they want to go.
Stephanie, why do you think founders struggle with this, making this transition?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so in my experience with a lot of the folks, and that's exactly who we work with, is those people who are just kind of making that transition and they haven't figured out that they have to make that transition. But what I find is stuck in their heads is this idea that they are not going to be valuable to the business anymore if they're not doing things, if they're not, and so when they get anxious or they get nervous about the growth of the company, or they don't necessarily know which direction they're going in, they default to the operational stuff, to the very nitty gritty, and can't get themselves out of there. And when they also can't see themselves as a leader who doesn't do that stuff, because the narrative in their head is that I'm no longer valuable if I'm not delivering. So I'd be interested in hearing your commentary on that.
I think that's true. I think that involves an identity shift. You truly have to shift how you view yourself and how you provide value. Being busy doesn't mean that's usually not the highest and best use of your time. And so I would just encourage people to think about what is truly their highest and best use of time. Because time is our most valuable resource. And if you can hire someone to do it for cheaper and or better, why aren't we doing that? I think the other thing, though, is not only so much feeling fearing that they're not going to fear that they're valuable, but also I think sometimes it's a trust issue, and one feeling that they don't trust that it can be done either as good as them or the same as them or their customers, or even their internal or their external customers expect them to be client facing day to day. They expect to see them in the office, present and active like they have always been. And they're afraid that if they release themselves from that, they may either lose business or quality goes down.
Right. And I think there's another trust piece here, which is around trusting themselves as to be strategic leaders, because that's not necessarily, they often have built a business from being a doer, right? Being in a role and their area of expertise. And now their job is to be leading this company. And that's a lot of pressure, right? It's a lot of pressure to be the business person when they don't necessarily feel like they're skilled up on how to lead the company and how to be that visionary. And what if they make a mistake? So I wonder what you think about that too.
Well, I think that's a good point, Stephanie. And I don't think that every business owner is necessarily cut out to be the visionary. I mean, I run my business on EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It actually was founded in Canada, and by
little plug for Canada,
Dan Sullivan. And I mean, it's a certain personality and skill assessment that you do to see if you're a visionary or an operator, or a combination of both. And I think it's very difficult to sit in a visionary role if you truly don't have that skill set. So perhaps not all business owners should be moved into that role, but they need to hire that role if they're not one. And then if they are one or want to be one, then surround yourself. I mean, it's just like any other skill. Surround yourself with those that are great groups out there, all different types of organizations for entrepreneurs that want to be in that role, where you can learn from afar and learn academically from courses as well. So I would just encourage people, if they do feel that they don't trust themselves in that role, to get more acclimatized to what that role really means and see if that's a good fit for them.
I'm struck here by a conundrum, and that is for like I think this is this imbalance for owners that are working in the business and not on the business is only. Tell me if this is wrong. I think it's only an entrepreneurial problem. If you're an employee, you don't have that. It never occurs to you. In fact, I would imagine there's probably people listening that think, I don't even understand. You mean your goal isn't always to start to get yourself out and do less and less work? right? Like, because that's kind of what it sounds like. And then we also get these, we're inundated as entrepreneurs with how other people are doing it. Elon Musk is coming to mind right now, where he works in the business and on the, like, he does not follow this advice.
Right.
And you it's hard to argue that he isn't successful. So help me, first of all, is this a conundrum? And help me process this as an actual issue that I got to care about.
Yeah. I mean, yes, Elon Musk is successful, but I would argue how much more successful could those businesses be if he sat in the true visionary role? We don't know. So I think that you do hold your company back. If you truly are a visionary, that is your highest and best use of time, with ideas and strategies that may not come to be if you're so involved in the day-to-day.
I think he would say, sorry, I don't want to interrupt Betsy, but I do want to pull on this thread a little bit and say, for highly engineering related companies, if you're not walking the factory floor, you don't really have a good pulse of the business. So I guess that's what I'm asking is, how are you able to walk away and think about strategy and still maintain that pulse of the business without being actively involved in the business itself? I find I struggle with this. So I'm really looking for how you do that.
Well, I don't know that you have to divorce yourself of that entirely. I mean, I still to this day will occasionally go on a listing appointment just to keep my
skills sharp.
My skills sharp. Hear what a customer is saying to my agents. It's same when I was in pharma. I was always in the corporate headquarters of different companies, but one of the things they always wanted us to do at any level, we would spend a day in the field with the rep, because it's just so important to see the end user experience. So I don't think that that's necessarily bad, and I don't think that means you're staying in the day to day. I think that makes you even more effective in your role. So I wouldn't say we have to divorce ourselves of that entirely, but if that's your main focus, then that's a problem. Because
Stephanie, do you ever see the flip side to this, where the owners are too checked out from the day to day?
Not really, because the folks that I'm working with are just starting to make that transition. And so they sort of cling to the day-to-day, and they cling to the doing part of their business. The one client I'm thinking of who it was literally a day. I remember the day that she had the light bulb go on and she went, "Oh, here's everything. Just take this all off my plate." And then she's been on this creative path. She teaches people how to write. And she teaches people how to write a certain genre, and she's got courses, and she's got, all of a sudden her life is now about this incredible creativity. And she is following every new idea that she has because she's been released from the piece that really didn't suit her. So I do think it's possible for a founder to get to the point where they're so checked out, but I don't see it a lot. I see it more the opposite, that they're trying to really hang on. My question to you, Betsy, is, it's curious to me, the timeline. So what was your timeline in terms of, when was that point that you kind of went, "Oh, I need to now get myself out of the business, and now this is the inflection point for me"?
Yeah, I think, honestly, looking back, I felt like I started too late. I wish I had started that process much sooner. I got into real estate 20 years ago, and it's been I'm coming up on the end of my 4th year where I had made the decision to have a plan to get out of the business. So I was at 4, so 16 years in, which I think is very late. I wish I had done it in year 4 or 5, but it is.
How many? So you said as we were talking, you're running a firm that's 60 people, roundabout.
Yeah.
How big were you before you made that transition? Did you see a dip? Did you see a little bit of a dip in business and then growth, or so talk me through what it did to your business, practically speaking.
So Well, it was hard because we had COVID and real estate was hit. So
Fair enough.
yeah. And so it's hard to know what impacted what. But it was more a decision based on two things. One is my business was getting flat. Like it had been on this upward growth trend, and then I could see it was getting flat. And two, I was getting tired of being in the day to day. So both of those things, I said, I got to do something different if I want a different outcome. And that's when I decided to make a strategic effort to exit the day to day. And it was not, I mean, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my business. I lost
Why?
Because I lost almost all of the people that had been with me for a decade or more, because they didn't want to see me go. They were used to seeing me every day. They were used to seeing me involved in every decision. They didn't like, I mean, it wasn't the person. They didn't like, I brought in new people to fill the roles. And I felt bad because it's like they had a target on their back. They didn't like those people because they didn't like what I was doing and the direction of the company. And I get it. I mean, they were with me when I was, working out of my garage, literally. And they wanted something small and feel like a family and wanted access to me on a daily basis. And that was no longer the case.
Yeah, this goes back to what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
And I find that extremely fascinating and not unique, in that when you decide to make that pivot to really scale, I was going to ask you, and you kind of answered it. Did you move people up internally, or did you bring in new people? You brought in new people. How did you find? First of all, was your first hire there a success as you were transitioning over, and why not?
So, my first operator was a success. We hired a couple of other people kind of to support that person, and those were utter failures.
Okay.
But the key operator is still with me and has been a success. But I mean, and to his credit, he really treaded some very tough waters because people didn't like what I was doing, so they took it out on him, not me.
Did they go behind his back and come to you and say, by the way, this guy's doing this, that, and the other, and you wouldn't, like, they did all that. They did all that survival stuff, right?
Yes, and it was very difficult for me. I mean, because these people had, I'm very loyal. They were very loyal to me. It was very difficult, and so now it took probably 2.5 years to get everybody kind of flushed through the system, and so now everybody's there. Everyone that's there supports where we're going, supports the people that we have in place. But it definitely is not for the faint.
How did you navigate that conversation with the people that were like, tell me how you navigated that conversation with the people that were loyal to you and you were loyal to.
Yeah.
And they're complaining about this person that you brought in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Them feeling totally justified, right? They're like, you don't know. It's like, how many times did you hear it's destroying our culture, right?
Oh, on a daily basis.
Right.
No, I mean,
so how did you navigate those conversations?
Yeah. And Anthony, I'll tell you, it was very difficult because a couple of them held key positions. And I truly felt like if you've ever been in a rowboat and somebody has stuck their oar, straight down, I felt like they were holding back what I was trying to do based on their behaviors. And I did not have the courage to let them go. And I should have. I should have ripped the Band-Aid off. I should have had a mass exodus, but instead I let them go when they wanted to go. And some of them took 2.5 years. And that did delay.
Delayed the start. But in hindsight, if you were to give yourself advice on, is there a conversation or expectation setting that you could have done better, or do you? So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think because I knew several key people. I knew in my head, I was having conversations with them, and I knew in a year they'd be gone. I knew they would come to that conclusion, but I didn't tell them that. I let them come to that conclusion at their own time. And that didn't help anybody. I didn't want the discomfort. I didn't want them to feel like I was kicking them out. But it hurt the company tremendously during that process. So
Was there
I
no
should've-
way that they could have grown into the role
No.
that you needed them to? No, there was just no way. It wasn't in them.
it was not, no. They were just philosophically wanted a different type of organization. And the number of times they referred back to working in the garage again. And I would say, we're not going back to the garage. We're moving forward. We're not going back.
Nostalgia.
It was so hard. It was,
Yeah.
But I should have said, listen, I can see this is not going to be best for you or for us. We need to recognize that and depart ways. And I didn't have that courage. And so I let them do it at their own pace.
That's fascinating.
I grew up in the .com days, and that was like the early part of my career. And it was like hyper growth. And we would go from that role of the CEO being the founder to the CEO being the CEO in probably months. And where you could really see, but that was the environment was of change and rapid change. And so everybody was already ready to, but after 16 years of being entrenched, that's tough stuff. Right. And it really speaks to, a cultural shift that you stepping out of that role is a significant change into the organization. And so I kind of want to ask you, what was the order of events for you? Like when you made that decision, I'm sure it came over time, but when you had that sort of epiphany that this is what I got to do, how did you plan for that? And what did it look like?
I got myself in a mastermind group, which is what I typically do whenever I want to do something big or new. I like to surround myself with people who have been there and done that. So I got into a mastermind group that meets every quarter. And then we already had our, mission and values. We've had those since the inception. But I worked on hiring the operator. That was the key position. And then also, which we had not been doing well, is systematizing all of our processes and SOPs and making sure everything was in place so that people truly could be interchangeable if I needed them to be. And then getting everybody, getting scorecards, getting metrics. Everybody has a number. And then getting a meeting cadence down so that there's a huge accountability, which was lacking. So really just putting so much more structure in the organization than we had ever had before. And then I had already been letting go of pieces of the business. Like I'm in real estate. And so when I was in production, I first let go of working directly with buyers and I let go directly working with sellers. So that was before I started this integration. But then I let go. This was the big piece, is letting go of working day to day with the agents, because agents often come to your brokerage for the broker. And so that was definitely a shift, and hiring the new broker role, even though I'm still there, but the day to day managing broker, that was a key hire as well. And that actually we've had maybe 4 different people in that role before it clicked.
And how long did you work sort of in parallel with your new leaders before you stepped out?
We're at the end of year 4, I would say 3 years. Long time. Yeah. But I think that I stayed in because I had these people that had not left yet. And so that was keeping me in the business longer than I wanted to be, because of the folks that had been with me forever. And I felt pulled and pressure to stay seen in the organization. But again, had I ripped the Band-Aid off year 1, that would have progressed much more quickly.
A mental block I had when going through this transition multiple times that I think you just reminded me of, and that is this transition for writing everything down, the processes, that like systematizing the business. And what I realized is the people that were in the jobs didn't want to document how to do their job for job security.
I know.
And which I had this empathy for. Like, yeah, I get it. I get that you don't want to, But what I also found fascinating is when I did find great operators that they wanted to document how to do everything because they didn't want to they have ambition beyond the job that they're in. So they want to be able to document it so that they can move up. And it's a really different mind shift for I don't think it's a mind shift. I don't think you can make that shift mentally. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
Stephanie, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I do consulting work into public sector organizations, and
I'm sorry.
I grew up in the technology sector. So, technology and public sector are oftentimes at odds because you're often working in this very unionized environment, and there's a lot of rigidity, and so it's always pretty interesting to see how people sort of hang on to knowledge and hang on to the things that they consider to be their personal brands within an organization. I think you see it a lot more so in an environment like that than you do in the startups. But certainly once you get to a certain size and things become a bit entrenched, there's a little bit of protectionism there as well. And no matter how well you develop a culture of, trust and security and what have you, there's a little bit of, everybody wants to hold on to their power and their influence. And sometimes that's where you see resistance for sure.
Politics.
Yeah, a little bit.
Betsy,
but where it's coming from, right?
I'm sorry, Stephanie. Betsy, did what you measure change?
Yeah, we always measured, profitability and looking at the P&L, but in terms of metrics, prior to 4 years ago, I would say there were very few metrics at all for any position, just some very top level ones. Now we're just measuring. We definitely have key measures, but we're measuring so many more, and everybody has a metric. It doesn't matter what level of the organization you're in, you have a metric, at least one, usually.
At least one. So talk about that a little bit. So before you made the change, what's that management style? How would you talk about that management style? Like where everybody, it's almost like smaller organizations kind of are the wild, wild west. This is very typical, right? Where what you're being measured on is a little tribal and not documented. But it works. For some reason it still works, but you hit this certain level. I call it the middle management. The second you have to hire a middle management, that everything completely breaks.
Yeah.
But how did you, so what you said was, I just want to make sure I understand it, is you didn't necessarily change metrics, you just added a bunch. Does that sound right? We added,
yes. And we looked at them. We look at them on a weekly basis now, where before it would be quarterly. We wouldn't look at leading indicators. We would just look at the result. And so it's just much more transparent, and we make decisions now much more proactively based on the data.
Was EOS a big part of that? Was EOS part of that transition for you?
Yeah. When did you? I was just going to ask the same question. When did you implement EOS? Like, how long has that been in place?
4 years. It's the same thing. Like when I decided to get out of the role, I implemented EOS. I brought the operator in. It was just a huge change for everything.
Did you hire an EOS consultant, or did you?
We hired an EOS implementer.
Implementer. Yeah, right.
Yes, and that was great. I mean, really invaluable. And then, and it helped, even though the people, that original group of people are no longer with me, because that was the group that didn't buy into what I wanted to do. But the implementer was instrumental in getting EOS implemented in the company. And then my operator has become excellent at doing that. And he runs it now, and he facilitates it.
So I've found this a lot, and we're going to be talking about EOS in depth next month with an implementer. So I find that to be very true. As long as you take it seriously, EOS can be a game changer for your company. Go ahead, Steph. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say, like one of the sort of the shadow side of EOS can be this rigidity, right? And it's like with anything, right? In the tech world, it's agile, right? People will implement agile and go buy the book, and then all of a sudden you end up with a much less agile organization where everything
It's
is much
dogmatic.
rigid.
Yes.
Yeah, much too dogmatic. And so, like, how did you ensure that you kept that agility inside the organization?
I'm not sure we did, honestly. I mean, it's a pretty structured organization, whereas before it was, like you said, Anthony, it was the wild, wild west. Now we have deviated a little bit sometimes in terms of EOS is structured in terms of, okay, these are the positions that sit in this meeting. These are the positions that sit in this meeting. This is the meeting cadence for this group, et cetera. We have customized that. But we follow it pretty religiously.
Yeah. Outside of EOS, were there any other systems or processes that you implemented that either worked or didn't work?
Not really.
Like even down to like tools, like what software did you bring?
Did you bring
software and any like?
Well, I mean, we change that all the time, not all the time, but we change that as our needs change. And so, like our CRM, we've got a couple going, and those change every couple of years based on what we need. And then the data tool that we use to analyze our metrics. So we do change those, but not because of this. It's more just based on what our needs are at the time. So I wouldn't say it's because of this that we have new.
I know a lot of big organizations that just manages their EOS on Google Sheets, like and it works for them great, actually.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so that's true, but
not just EOS. I wasn't just talking about EOS, but yeah.
So EOS has I don't know what it's used. I think it's called Traction Tools still, and then there's a spinoff called Bloom Growth, and those are two platforms that you can run your EOS company on. That is great in terms of meeting cadence, where to house the scorecards, where to house your quarterly, yearly, 3-year and 10-year business plans, your org chart. It's a really great platform. So those are two, Bloom Growth and Traction Tools, that you can use. We use Bloom Growth to manage and run EOS on that. I forgot about that one, but yeah, it's been great for us.
So shifting the conversation just a little bit, I'm guessing you were quite motivated when you first got started on this transition for this sort of vision for what life's going to look like. When you go, and I'm certain it wasn't easy. So what kept you going through that transition? What kept you focused and dedicated to the transition?
There were many times when I either wanted to revert back to how we used to do things or honestly quit because it was very difficult. But being in that mastermind group, and I'm still in it, was life-changing because I saw people who had done it successfully that were where I wanted to be in terms of not only their company growth, but their lifestyle and their freedom of time. And that's what I wanted. So I am pretty stubborn in terms of my goals. And so I think that was really just being in the mastermind group, being assured that this is possible for me. And then just my nature of not wanting to feel like I gave up, not tried.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that shifts, the folks that I work with once they're in this place where they're ready to transition, is the thing that prevents them from getting there is that they don't have a vision of where they're going. Like, what's their role going to be once they get there? And what are they going to focus their time on? And what does it feel like? And what does it look like? And what is their purpose once they shift, either whether it's an exit or whether it's like an operational exit where they're taking themselves out of the business. So I'm curious what your vision of yourself was that kept you going.
So my vision, and I'm in a coaching program called Strategic Coach, and they help you with this. And it was, you have so many free days. So I had a goal of how many free days I wanted in my life, meaning you don't work in your business at all for a 24-hour period. And really wanting to free up a lot of my time to pursue other things, whether they're business opportunities. I've got investment things that take up my time that have nothing to do with my main line of business. I've got empty nester with 2 children, 1 abroad. So there's things that I wanted to spend my time on. So that was what it looked like. And then the role within the company was being somebody who was responsible for the vision, the culture to some extent, but I'm not there a lot. So just to some extent, but driving that, and then bringing in the big ideas, the big relationships that can move the company forward. That's what I was envisioning.
One of the more influential books I read, which was really funny because when someone recommended it to me, I was like, oh no, another bro book, middle-aged white man, blah, blah, blah. And I did read it, and it shifted my thinking, and it shifted my thinking about the growth of the business, which was 10x is easier than 2x. Honestly, you can probably read the first few chapters and get the concept, and the rest of it is really not all that useful. But it really, really shifted my thinking about what we were spending our time doing and what we were, working on from an envisioning perspective. And I'm wondering what that was for you, like that kept you, one of the things you said, let me go back to something you said at the beginning. It was about the business operates without me, but the business also grows without me. So what did you put in place for that business grows without me?
Well, the systems and processes, when they're followed, that will result in growth. When I find that something is, one of the issues we've had in our company is we have great systems, but they're not always followed. And that's when we have a breakdown. So that's where I see that. And then the other thing with 10X is easier than 2X, because that's the Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy group, and that they're in the strategic coach. What I love about that idea is that you cannot get there doing more of what you currently do. You have to think outside the box. And that's what I love. And that's the whole idea is that, and that's not where your competition is. Your competition, most people are just believe that doing more of what they're currently doing will yield them great results. But no, if you have a true 10X goal, it's impossible to get there just doing more of what you're currently doing. So it makes you think outside the box and have collaborations. So,
and when we talk about becoming that visionary, which is not always natural to everybody, but I think that's one of the best ways to start to train that sort of visionary muscle. I remember looking at my business and just going, oh my gosh, everything we're doing, everything we worry about on a day-to-day basis might move us incrementally forward. For us to start moving in big steps, I'm thinking of completely different ideas, and completely different. And then I just all that day-to-day stuff just kind of went away.
Right, exactly. And it's you're going to be probably in almost like a new business where, one example is collaborating with your competitors on either maybe you have a great system or process that you can sell to your competition, or like I have a service idea that I think will be great, and it's a model that I want to test with a small group of companies and then roll that out to my competition. So, but that's because of that 10X versus 2X, right? I would never think of that if I hadn't have read that book. I mean, I'm a true believer of that book. And then the other one, also by the same people, is Who Not How. And that book is life-changing too, in terms of getting yourself out of this daily operations, because you realize that's not where, if you're a true visionary, that's not where you should lie. But that's a great book too.
So I'm going to go ahead. I feel like we can be chatting on this for another 40 minutes. I'm going to go ahead, and Betsy, I'm going to jump right. Are you ready for the speed round? Oops, sorry. These questions designed just a quick top of your head answers. Are you ready?
Yeah.
When replacing yourself in operations, hire somebody who thinks like you or somebody who challenges your methods?
No, challenges your methods.
All right, great. For critical business decisions during your transition, maintain final approval authority or delegate completely with clear guardrails?
I actually would say the latter.
Delegate with guardrails.
Yeah.
When building, that takes a lot of trust. Oh my
It
goodness.
does.
That gives me like anxiety just thinking about it. Okay. So when building your leadership team, prioritize previous CEO experience or keep domain expertise in your industry.
Or keep what?
Or deep domain experience. Like, are you
No,
looking for
the first.
leadership experience or deep domain experience?
Leadership.
Leadership. For measuring the success of the person you bring in, focus on revenue growth metrics or operational efficiency improvements.
I think initially it would be the latter, but then, after a year or two, I would want to see that revenue growth. So
Okay. And then when stepping back from customer relationships, do you maintain direct contact with your top 10% or do you try to transition all of those relationships?
Well, I think the books tell you the first, but I don't. I try to offload everything.
Try to offload it. Great. This is great. Stephanie, what are the founder fundamentals that you took down?
So my first one is about the sort of duality of making sure that your business is self-managing and self-growing. I thought that was a really great point, and we talked a little bit about that. Shifting your identity as a leader, like where and how do you create value? I think that's a really important piece of this whole transition, and probably the first thing that you need to do. And then managing the conversation with those who are involved in the change, being aware that there are people who are just not going to go with you when you leave, right? Like there are people who are just not going to be able to make the change. And so be honest about that conversation up front and figure out what that transition looks like for them. And then when you're moving out of the CEO role, building more structure and letting go of the day-to-day, like those are the two things that we heard from Betsy were the most important pieces for her to be able to do that. And then finally, I think this one is really key, is being supported during that transition by others who have been there, by the vision that you create for your new role and your new life, and knowing what's motivating you to get to the other side.
100% agree. This was a great, I really enjoyed the episode. So for those of you looking to dive deeper in the subject, we talked some of these. E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, Traction, which is the EOS book, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman, 10X is Easier than 2X by Dan Sullivan, The Great CEO Within, which is a great book from Matt Mochary, and Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. Betsy, where can we learn more about you?
Sure. I've got a website, betsypepine.com, and my book is available on the website as well as on Amazon and all the major bookstores online. And then I'm on all the social platforms. My handle is Betsy Pepine.
Amazing. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Reminder to go follow us on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review if you can. Just go to howtofounder.com to figure out where to follow us. Stephanie, thank you again for co-hosting. Betsy, again, great episode. I really appreciate you. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you soon. Take care.